It's time for Dr. Rademaker's prescription for transformation. Let's tap into your own authentic genius and live the life you desire. Join Dr. Rademaker for an enlightened conversation about our brain intelligence, our body intelligence, and our energy intelligence. And now, here's your host, Dr. Bart Rademaker. And now, here's your host, Dr. Bart Rademaker.
Well, I'm Dr. Bart Rademaker, prescription for your transformation, real people, real conversations, and real success. And doing things a little differently today. And super excited that we had an echo in the transmission today because both the radio station and myself were playing the same audio. So I'm going to be very challenged today. Admittedly, I'm generally challenged, with the technology, being the one person doing all things myself. But the challenge today is keeping a straight face with my dearest friend. And I'm going to wait with introductions because I got to have my spiel first. I have to at least begin this introduction because more than likely this will be my only opportunity to have anything to say today. Today we do have Robin joining us. She's somewhere there in the background. She's my awesome producer, so thank you. She has decided that her hair day isn't working out today, so she planned not to have the video. Which I think happens all the time, so that's why we never see her. So, but Robin is just absolutely phenomenal. She's got the most beautiful radio voice I've ever heard. It's the only voice I've heard, by the way. So I want to thank Robin for being here. Seriously, having a challenge today to keep a straight face, but there is some seriousness in this, and that's going to be my first part. So it's about next year. And it is really all about what is it that you're doing in preparation for that year. And oftentimes what happens is that this almost becomes an afterthought by the end of the year, like maybe a few days before the end of the year, and say, I've got to start thinking about what needs to happen. And I've had the amazing privilege to have someone in my life that has fundamentally changed my ability to optimize and master the things that are most important to me. And I wish everybody had a person like this. In fact, you could have this person like this, but I would advise you not to organize things like this because it gets a little hairy. But seriously, this guy is amazing. Chad E. Cooper from the Chad E. Cooper Organization, Foundation, and tons of other things that he does. Legendary lifestyles. Just an incredible human being with an incredible background, being a Marine, being a mayor, being a politician, and having worked with one of the best coaching programs in the world. And now he's got the best coaching program in the world. Chad Cooper, thanks for joining me today.
It's good to be here. It's very good. English is strong. Yes.
So I am sorry if I just lose it, because I will. He's a redneck American from, Michigan?
Michigan.
So
you could tell the accent just a second ago. Very Michigander. That was not Eastern Europe, Georgia, Russia, any of that. So, yes.
Well, one of his talents, by the way, is he imitates people.
Being obnoxious.
Well, besides that. So... but really, seriously, I think it's amazing that you're here today. We get to talk. I get to learn a lot of really cool things to change my life, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the support and assistance of you as a friend, as a brother, and also as a coach.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure, and I mean that sincerely. I am excited about being able to support your audience, and mostly in what people would be going, dude, have you looked at the calendar? It's October. A little early in talking about the new year. And the reality is, no, we're not. We've had this discussion, is if there's a race and Robin's betting on it, she's already put her money on me. So we'll do a different race. But if you're in the race for next year and you're competing against somebody else, who has the better odds of winning? The person that is on a quarter of the track and starting to gain full speed so that when they come to the start line and the gun goes off, they're at full speed? Or is it the person that's in the starting blocks and the gun goes off and they're just starting? We already know. Game over.
Right.
Right? So the problem that I see very frequently, and this is the work that I'm doing with my students, is we start looking at the new year as, okay, it's January 1st. Well, you've got a hangover. You are already glutton. You've eaten too much, and it's football day. So that day's gone. January 2nd. Okay, you've been off for the holiday, and now you're trying to play catch up. So when you really get around to doing a half-cocked job in setting up your new year, within 21 days, you're going to quit. And the reason for that is you really should be taking a couple of months to really figure out what's it going to take to achieve your hopes and your dreams for the year. And so why not do that in a way that fosters a little bit of growth, a little bit of growth, a little bit of growth, so that you get to the starting gate ready and prepared. So that's really what the first part of that is really about.
So that begs the question that I always have to ask. You know, what is the reason why people are really not engaged this early with that process? Because what you're saying is common sense. But what's holding people back from taking that action in advance?
I think people are too busy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people lack the proper support group to really work with others to really understand what it takes. So let's really take a look and see what are most going to be doing. Well, they're going to be reading a magazine, or they've watched some video on YouTube. And in all honesty, it's been my experience that the vast majority of them are still teaching some shape, form, or fashion of Stephen Covey or his time frame. Now, I've got no problems with Stephen Covey. And what he did in his time was amazing. The challenge that I have is he doesn't necessarily fit in his principles in today's 21st century. Why is that? Well, let's see. We have how many phone numbers today? And we don't change our phone number. We just take it with us anywhere that we go as we move around in the world today. We have how many email addresses? We have how many social media accounts? We have how many different texting? We are barraged nonstop with incoming chatter and noise. And so it really, to do this right, means maybe we need to take some small, frequent pit stops and start just planning a little bit, and a little bit. You know that I was recently down in the Virgin Islands and took a week. In the first couple of days, I just relaxed. Just didn't feel like I was going to do anything. Just kind of let myself go to enjoy. Then throughout the week, it was, okay, here's a thought, here's a bullet point, capture it. Here's a thought, okay, and those kept on leading to, by the end of the week, having a rock solid plan of who I wanted to become at age 70. Because that's really the next milestone marker in 20 years for me. So why don't they? Because they don't have the time and they don't have the community that helps foster that as part of the problem. And they're being taught outdated modalities.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think one of the key distinctions that I've discovered over time is the lack of awareness. It's just this expectation that things are going to happen and I'll figure it out later on. They're temporizing everything. They're not realizing that for them to get the outcomes that they want, they really have to plan. And you and I know the study back in the 50s, graduating class of Harvard, and then followed up 20 years later, and then 3% of that graduating class is equivalent to the income and success and happiness and wealth and everything else than the other 97%. And the difference was they had a plan. And I think what's happening is that people are just lacking that awareness, exactly because what you're saying is the barrage, the tsunami of information, And also, unfortunately, I think what's happening too is we're getting this sense of immediate gratification. So this barrage gives us supposedly, this kind of gratification in the moment, and sort of delays the need to actually take care of something until a crisis happens.
So that immediate gratification, I think, has pure intentions for the most part. But the thing that I am beating my head against the wall, and I was just talking to somebody on my drive over, and they said, look, what you got is great, but when I hear you talking versus when you're sitting over in this other, is that you're filtering, and you really just need to be unvetted, just let it be. And so I think that part of that problem in that transparency is that there's a major illusion, there's a major snake oil, I don't know what you want to call it, there's a major distraction in understanding when most people are setting their New Year's goals. Goals being the key word.
Right.
I went about it in a different beginning and said, who do I want to become by a certain date and mile marker or milestone? And so if you look at it, who do I want to become, that is far more enriching than a goal, because most goals are really about what? A material attainment for the most part, right? And there's this illusion today of if you get this quick fix, then it's going to make everything better, only to do it and go, well, that didn't really turn out the way I intended it to. The second part of it is then you have the other crowd of the ultra spiritual people and saying, oh, you've got to shun all this material. And my answer to that is it's yes and. You want to integrate both of them. It's not an either or. And that takes real thought. That takes real time to turn off the YouTube 3-minute videos, to throw out what everybody's trying to promise and say, and just sit. Be still and ask yourself, who do you want to become? Because that will encapsulate the purpose, that'll encapsulate what the vehicles are that allow you to facilitate, that'll encapsulate the goals that allow it to happen, and it will encapsulate both the material and the spiritual aspects that you need to really make it a lasting experience.
So really what you're saying, and that's the key word, is the last word that you used, is establishing or defining or looking towards a very specific experience and knowing what that is in advance. And part of that obviously is, who do you become? But I like what you said, and I'd like to enhance that in the sense of, as I'm looking at the outcomes, I like the word outcomes more than the goals, but as I look at 2020 and see those outcomes, what excites me more about that, and then I really got this from you again, is who do I need to become to make that actually happen? And so that's an experience that they get to experience every single day, every single moment, as much as I'm aware of that, versus waiting for this outcome to happen and not having the fun and experience that I want to have until that happens.
Yeah, so why do people give up 21 days into that? Even if they do this.
Right.
Is my experience right now, people have great intentions, but I am beating my head against the wall with this, trying to figure out how to communicate to people. We live in a society today that doesn't know how to properly quench their thirst. And what do I mean by thirst? So what I mean by that is, we look at the opioid epidemic problem. If we look at the suicide rate being the highest in the last 50 years, and it's still climbing. If we look at the number of medications, we look at the millennial generation has been renamed now the anxiety generation. what that's telling you is people are in the desert dying of thirst. And what they're being sold is junk food and told that it's nutritious. And so how do you compete with the material shiny object when the real nutrition is, I'm not saying discard that, but the real answer is spiritual fulfillment. Because we can go into this side of the spiritual fulfillment and then go, yeah, I tried that, and this person who said that they were all a guru and they were so enlightened, they trusted only to be misled.
Right.
Took their money and they're doing spirituality and not being spiritual. So when we look at our goals and we say, who do I want to become? It's about addressing both aspects of those by your definition, not society standards, because society's got a really low bar. So, but it's about our standards. But we have to get past the point of, okay, if I talk about a church, then suddenly you're an angry white Republican that is a hate monger. No. Or if I talk about a Muslim, then you must be, a terrorist or something. No. Or if you're a guru, you're supposed to have all the answers. No. So we've got to get past this fear. And what it's interesting is I'm seeing that the pendulum starting to swing from we had to be super sensitive and politically correct to now it's back in fashion to be politically incorrect. Look at the comedians out there. Kevin Hart, I'm trying to think of a couple of them that crack me up. But they're making a killing on political incorrectness. Why? Because there's a level of truth of saying, are you letting your environment be an excuse or an explanation? So your success this next year is not the environment's fault. It's an explanation, but the reality is what are you going to do about it? Are you going to let the external world make you a victim? Or are you going to take responsibility and say, you know what? There's some material things that I want because they compliment me, because I like nice things. But having that badge thing, in whether you approve of me or you reject me, is not going to affect my self-worth in one bit. And so it's about being able to say it's okay to have nice stuff, but it has your approval or your judgment has no basis for it. I like it because it makes me happy. And the same thing with if you have a faith in something, if we actually strip away the labels and we actually look at the behavior and the character of that, then what we would actually find is common ground of more in common than what actually separates us. But people don't want to do that when it comes to New Year planning. They want to go after I want to make more money. Well, I want to have a better job. Well, I want to have more sex. It's all softeners, nothing concrete of exactly how much money. How many vacation days do you want? Get concrete and own it for yourself. There's a lot of crap in that.
Yes, definitely. And what's interesting in all this is that if I reflect on my own personal journey, very blessed growing up in all these different countries, speaking 4 different languages, and then in training for 17 years as a physician. And what I reflect on that part is that, during those 17 years, I was just in a tunnel. And I couldn't see what was outside, of that tunnel. I was just fully dedicated to that. And I find that many people are within a tunnel themselves. They're not seeing what's out there, what's available to them. Because what I discovered at the end of that tunnel was that as much as I thought I was pretty smart and intellectual and intelligent and everything else, there's so much that I realized that I didn't know. And I'm finding that what we don't know is what really makes a difference in this world. And so what I'm finding as well in our world today is that there is this intense fear of being disconnected from others, and so therefore I must align with that. I must align with that mentality because I still don't have a direction. I don't know who to trust. I don't know what information I need. And quite frankly, the sense of hope is really almost entirely gone because of all the mess that's happening in the world. And so not being properly educated to understand what's happening, geopolitically, and therefore just, sort of shrinking, and then getting the phone and part of this, using that phone, and there's studies that show this, that if you're on your phone all the time, that's a major reason for people being depressed.
Yeah, so what's the point of all that? The point of that is you're not going to accomplish a meaningful goal in planning for 2020 in a day or in 20 minutes. You need 2 months to figure this out, to break bread with people that you respect and say, hey, what was your journey? I mean, you and I know the chief in New Zealand, and I said, if I want to become a wise counselor, why don't I go to somebody who I consider one of the wisest counselors? Let's see. The Dalai Lama goes to their marae and recharges his batteries there. Was personal friends with President Nelson Mandela before he passed, and on and on. Yeah, think he's got I can trust and verify. Hey, if he's good enough for these guys, he might make the grade for me. I mean, I got a pretty high standard. Why don't I ask what was his journey?
Right.
I'm not going to do that in 20 minutes. I'm not going to do that after I've been out partying for the new year.
And that's the big challenge. I think people think that things either have to happen quickly because they're impatient or they're being distracted, or the other part that I found, and this was one of my own personal challenges, was that, well, if I don't know it right away, then I'm not smart enough. And I think that's a big issue with people, is that they're not appreciating the fact that there's a lot of work required, a lot of time required to get it right, and knowing that many times you're going to get it wrong before you do get it right.
Yeah, and let's be real. We all have other things going on. So if you really think that you're going to just sit down and just gorge yourself, I'm going to spend the next 8 hours on this, realistically, it's probably not practical for most people. Realistically, your spouse is going to say, oh, you got time for that, but you don't have time for me, or your boss, or your clients, whatever.
Well, that never happens to me.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say something about the, in a short amount of time, but I decided not to talk about your sex life. So, anyway.
Thank you. Hey, Robin. So Robin's here in the background.
I was wondering if she's going to chime in here.
So chime in there for a second.
I wasn't asked to come in.
Well, okay. You're allowed to come in. Your thoughts so far.
Please give us the socialism perspective on this.
It's kind of funny that you guys are talking about this subject, because I actually wrote about it in my blog today, because I do transformational soul coaching. So I'm kind of like on a different train, but I completely get what you guys are talking about. And the way I talk to my clients a lot of times is I tell them, look, you've got to start off with a positive mindset. And that begins every day. Your feet hit the floor. You're breathing. You're alive. Okay, that's a good start. Now look in that mirror and become your best cheerleader. You got to start positioning your mindset in order to move forward, because everybody gets stuck. You know that. We all need help. But the biggest thing is to use that mind. That mind is such an incredible tool that gets wasted so much of the time. And what I always tell everybody is, look, it starts off with a positive frame of mind, and you say, whatever I conceive, I believe, and I will achieve. It's a good starting statement to put that positive affirmation. And then I go a step further. For instance, I've been saying, I am a best-selling author. So you want to claim it, I am. And you want to put that frame of mind in a positive mindset so that it gets you going forward. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're onto something. I should try that in my coaching practice, because what I do is I read the coaching form, and then I usually get on. I'm like, I've looked over your form, and I just give up. I mean, I don't see a way forward. So
he's only talking about me, by the way. But
that might have something to do with my retention rates, but I don't know. I think I like your path better. But if we look at yours, with you saying I'm a best-selling author, that's who do you want to become?
Right.
And it takes us time to get out of the social indoctrination of, Robin, you better be appropriate, you better behave appropriately, don't post something that might piss somebody off. And so we're supposed to be the nation of dreams, the yellow brick road that is paved with gold that you can realize and manifest your dreams. But if you do, don't get too boisterous about it. Don't scream it to the rooftop. You better play small, because you might, upset somebody else. So it takes us time to remove that armor, to remove that being socially appropriate, and allowing us to be in a position of dreaming the possibilities.
Right, because we fear what others think most of the time.
Right.
And to be persistent and consistent in that, because we fear about what other people think.
But I do like what you said, Robin, and it does start off with a positive mindset. And there is truth. I mean, everything that's ever been manifested started off in your head. And so whatever we can think of, we can make happen. And it's only going to happen when you're putting positive energy in there, and absolutely 100%
Right.
for that.
It doesn't happen overnight, like he said. It is a work in progress, but you have to constantly focus on that work in progress
Right.
and keep going with a positive mindset.
Well, and let's look at, Ramen, you picked to be a best-selling author.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just an example I put out there.
Yeah. So I chose to be a best-selling author, like legitimately, not creating some category that never existed on Amazon before.
But you never made it though, right?
Well, it was a crayons drawing, but it did get runner-up to
Actually,
yours.
for everyone to listen to, this is a must-read book. I bought it and I learned from it. After the first page, I gave it up. But no, seriously, what's the name of the book?
Yeah, I'm interpreting it into cartoon characters so that he can finish the rest of it. So,
Thank you.
It's funny, Robin, because the title of the book, and it did make national legitimate
Yes.
bestseller and won some awards. It was originally titled "Time Isn't the Problem, You Are: 4 Strategies to Transform Stress into Success." What I found was, in our Snowflake Nation, is the "you are" was too in your face. And so I had to soften it, and now my publishers are like, it's just called "Time Isn't the Problem."
You're
don't like
kidding
that.
me. You
No.
changed it.
I took it off, and you'd be amazed at the difference. But here's the thing. Let's talk about
Wow.
the "you are." Because the whole point in that, Robin, is if you can't admit that you're part of the problem, then you can't identify that you're also part of the solution. And if you don't have if you can't tell a little bit of a sense of humor, then what is life for? But we can
Right.
take best-selling author, and for whatever reason, it reminds me of our former president, John F. Kennedy, in the race to the moon. And he said, "We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it is hard." Terrible Boston accent. But
It works.
he chose to do it because it was hard. The thing that you are afraid of the most
Right.
is probably the thing that you should most be doing.
Yeah, there's a great mindset that says, most of us are not so afraid that it's difficult, but rather that it's not difficult enough. And I think, as we talk about in many of your sessions and coaching programs and webinars, is that, when you stay in your comfort zone, things are easy. That's not where you're going to expand. And so for us to evolve, to have the experience in our lives, we need to get out of that comfort zone. We need to make things difficult, but why make it just a little bit difficult? Why not make it really difficult? I've seen some speeches at graduations where people are saying, stop, thinking big, stop having big dreams, and think small, because at least that way you can succeed. And that's insane, because there's 10 times more within us that we're capable of, that we're just not tapping into, and to reach out for that, and then to lead a life that is so just wonderful, because you've chosen to have faith in yourself, you've chosen to do the work, and you've chosen to get the right kind of coaches, then it works.
Why limit yourself?
Right.
So speaking of limit, Robin, when you help somebody create this, how many of them are willing to share that with and be vulnerable enough to share it with somebody else? To sit down and say, hey, let me tell you about my goals, what my dreams are.
Well, usually where I start out with is I have to find where their trouble spot exists from. And as you know, it's usually from trauma in their childhood. So that's where I start at. But by the time they're finished with this whole thing, they get really excited about sharing that and being vulnerable. Because when I wrote the first book, I had to be extremely vulnerable and peel back every layer possible. And it scared the hell out of me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are on a platform where you can speak to people and be that vulnerable, then people are not afraid to be vulnerable if you support them. So I have found that they have been very vulnerable with their family members, and they've been able to work through some of the things that they've had to deal with.
It's been my experience in that is yes, and the ones that they're most afraid of is their family members.
Right.
Because you were talking about playing small. And what's ironic is the people that we love and trust the most are usually the ones that don't even realize they're telling you don't risk it, play small. Why? Because they don't want you to get hurt. They don't want to see you fail. They don't want to see you in pain or suffer. When we should be going, I think it was Jim Carrey that said, you can fail by not trying.
Mm-hmm.
So you might as well at least try. You might just win or something. I think I destroyed it. But
Well, Oprah Winfrey said there's no such thing as failure unless you fail to try.
yeah. So we need to go to our family and ask for their support. Ask for, okay, can you realistically tell me what was great about this? But if we're setting our goals, don't make the error. One of the things I learned in performance school speaking was never ask somebody for just open-ended criticism or feedback. Always be very specific. Okay, I'm going to talk. I'm going to go through my speech. What I want you to do, all I want you to do is tell me, where did you tune out? And people will go, especially family, right, Robin, they'll be like, yeah, but I got all this other good stuff to tear you down and tear you apart with, but that's not how they say it. But they're like, but I got all this other stuff. Great. Why don't you hold on to that? I'm not ready for it, and maybe I'll come back, and you never will, right? But be specific, crystal clear with what feedback do you want. Do not leave it open-ended.
So interesting what you just said, and fascinating. So what's the motivation? What's the reasoning for people to want to be able to criticize you?
I'm so smart.
Okay.
That's been my experience, right? I want to share because I know the way I can rescue you, I can prevent you from failing, or I can be the one that gets the credit because I'm the one that made the difference.
Robin,
We want to share our wisdom.
what are you going to say?
I was saying sometimes it could be projection because they're too afraid to look in the mirror at themselves, so they want to look at you and make all this big hullabaloo about the mistakes you're making or they believe you're going to be making because they don't want to see what they're doing that's wrong.
Yeah, I think Emerson said something to the fact that the biggest critics are basically confessing their own character traits. But one of the things that I find interesting too, in the world of personal development, and one of the reasons that people are so critical is because they're afraid of losing you as well. Thoughts on that? Because if they stay behind, if they remain stagnant and you grow, guess what? You're going to leave them behind in the dust.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. The reality is you can choose to still be friends with them. You can choose to still have a quality relationship, but they can also choose to go along the journey. They can also choose to tag along and do the work themselves. But even dead fish can float downstream. It takes commitment and work to be the salmon and go against the current. But that's where the reward is. And so there was a study where they actually asked, the study basically conducted that it's easier and more common for people to choose a life of less prosperity, to be more mediocre and settle than to do the work and achieve because of that fear. So do people, are they afraid that you're going to leave them? Absolutely. Give them that choice.
So there's a new movie out there, and I don't know if you've seen it, Robin. And part of me wishes I hadn't seen it because it's taken away the image of this incredible artist that I've always had. To see then the very sad story behind the journey of this artist. You know what I'm talking about?
Bambi?
No.
It's been out for a while.
No, not Bambi. Bambi's not an artist. Come on now. Elton John.
Let me ask you a question about that, Doc, because when I wrote my first book and it came out, there was someone who I'd known for a number of years, and they read it, and he said, "I wish I had never read your book." I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because now I see how sad your journey has been, and it makes me feel really bad. I didn't want to know that part." I said, "Yeah, but you have to understand that it's part of my journey to make me who I am today.
Right.
You love who I am today. So why did that movie make you feel that way?"
Well, that's a very interesting question. But let me finish what I would say, and then I'll answer that one. It's about Elton John. And he had everything against him, from his parents and moving onwards. And so he had his life was very lonely and very lost in many ways. But just the impact that he's had in the world of music is just absolutely phenomenal. So to answer your question, I think there's really two parts. We all love to be inspired, and the one of the fun ways to be inspired is to actually see somebody's success and to see the magnificence of what's possible. And sometimes it's important just to see that on the surface, not necessarily needing to understand all the things that happen to get you there. The truth is that there is always a journey and many challenges within that journey. And so when we're embarking on that journey, then we have to also face those challenges. But as part of the motivation, it's kind of fun to think, this is my goal, this is my outcome, I want to achieve that, and to have the faith that you're going to make it happen and not be told of the truth in advance.
I guess I had maybe we're talking the same thing, but I had a very different experience with the Elton John movie.
Right.
Now, I already knew his background and his history and the journey he went on. And I've heard similar to what you've said, but what I actually saw was the journey of somebody who was going after the fame and fortune to become enough. Because he didn't get enough love
Right.
from his family, from his mother and his father.
Right.
And if there's one thing that I could wish for every one of your audience here to work on in 2020 for their goal, would be the outcome. He had to hit rock bottom. But the part I love about the message that I found so inspiring is at the end of it, he realized that nobody can do his work.
Right.
And that nobody can love you enough. You have to learn how to love yourself.
Yep.
And until you can love yourself, you can't contribute and give that out to the rest of the world. And so if there's one thing that I found just so redeeming about that was he learned how to truly love himself.
Mm-hmm.
All of his greatness and all of his quirks. And the thing is that his best friend, Barry, I think it was, who wrote all, who was it, Robin?
Bernie.
Sanders. Bernie Sanders was there the whole time writing these amazing songs. And he's never on, the candidate stage to be president telling you about
Right.
these amazing songs today.
Right.
But he was there the whole time.
Right.
Thank you, Bernie Sanders. Thank you, Robin.
Robin.
Um,
But yeah, that's Bernie was his right hand man, and he fell in love with him. But of course, Bernie was not homosexual, but their relationship was just so
it was beautiful.
beautiful
Yeah.
because they created something.
Right.
And like you were saying, Elton had to go through all of that to hit rock bottom and realize, hey, I have my self-worth back again, because he never did love himself through all of that.
And the amazing thing is that Bernie saw him through all his ups and downs and was really the one person that loved him for
Yeah.
him.
Yep.
And was
Yes.
the one person that complimented Bernie's voice on the music sheet to be able to express it vocally.
Right.
And I mean, what an incredible relationship! And I love that you were like, Bernie was heterosexual. It was about love.
Right.
And that's it.
It's
And,
So-
and even
so-
to the point that he loved him enough to say, "Dude, I gotta leave you be here. This is your work to do, and I can't
Right.
see this anymore."
So switching channels just for a moment.
Yeah, because it's been. I need to order a pizza. Robin, can you order me a pizza? Is she this like the Siri version?
So
of,
I did tell you you can pull a plug whenever you needed to, and then just do a replay from last week. I think.
Only if you share half the pizza with me, we're good.
I
Yeah.
got Alexa. You got Robin.
So he's getting to the point where it's going to get out of control in a moment, and then it's just going to kind of make everything he said in the last 40 minutes useless, because
It's usually how I
So-
just bomb.
yeah,
It's that
right.
one thing. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
that was it.
That was it. Love. So talk about love for a moment. And one of the things that I always have a challenge with is that, when we are conflicted with or challenged, and when we beat ourselves up, and I think many of us will do that. And interesting enough, I think if we treated others the way we treat ourselves, we would have no friends. But as we do beat ourselves up, and I've heard this comment, we just gotta love yourself. And ultimately, it is about how is it that we get to love ourselves. And one thing I shared with you a while back, and I wanted your take on this too, Robin, is instead of just putting this clean diaper on a dirty diaper, just love yourself, just like all those spiritual gurus say, oh, you just gotta love yourself. I discovered the best journey or route for me to love myself is to just remove the things that prevent me from loving myself. And so that at the end of that, I'm just love.
What does that mean?
So what it means is,
What are the things preventing you from loving yourself?
whatever I'm thinking of, whatever I'm focusing on, that prevent me from, loving myself by just beating myself up, being critical about myself, and as I chunk those away, remove those, then there's nothing that is preventing me from loving myself. Because I think in the end, the reason that so many of us have this challenge and not recognizing, as Robin was saying, not seeing yourself in the mirror, is you're just looking at all your faults. What if you were just able to, like you're saying, he redeemed himself just to love himself the way that he was.
Well, I think for Elton John, part of that along the way was realizing that love is not rejecting parts of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about suppressing and denying that darkness that every one of us have, right? It isn't. So what does that mean? It's not about, well, I'm a male, so I can only embrace the masculine. I have to deny the feminine. It's not a, well, there was another example I had in there that just gone. But we all have quirks. Like one of them, Robin, if I ever hear you say, in your mind's eye, I'm never going to talk to you again, okay? It drives me nuts. I hate that. In your mind's eye. So overused, okay?
Yes.
But it's about those things that are abrasive in accepting that is part of who you are. The comedian and the asshole. The you know, there is a part of us that we want to shun, that we want to hide, that we don't want the world to see. And when we can accept that as part of us, because there is absolutely the light in the dark, right? The material or the spiritual. It's not either or. It's a yes and. And when we can look at ourselves and say yes and,
Right.
then we can actually find the love for ourselves. But if we are trying to deny and suppress a piece of that, that's where we struggle, because you're not complete. It's that darkness that actually makes us uniquely us. And in the right environment, in the right context, it's an asset. And we've used the extreme example of, you know, any rational, sane person. You are not included in this, Robin, because, well, Bart talks. So everyone else would not rationally kill somebody, right?
Right.
But if I said, okay, I'm going to hold a gun to your family member's head.
This is where you bleep it out, Robin.
Yeah. Then the most rational, sane person would go, yeah, I wouldn't hesitate. Why? Because in that environment, it is about an altruistic, pure intention. And so there's a darkness in us that is actually, when we take that energy and serve it with good intention, it becomes light energy. It's all just energy. And it's our responsibility to find where do we belong in this world, that darkness actually can be converted into light.
And so basically what you're saying, it's a lot of work to do this. It's an evolution. It is removing what's preventing us. It's also recognizing the dark side and accepting that. So to move forward, because we don't have a lot of time left, but eyeing the mind, right? Not in the mind's eye. But
in the mind's eye.
No, not in the mind's eye. Eyeing the mind of next year.
Do not worry, we'll be with you.
2020. Let's help the listeners come up with some very specific steps that they need to do before December 31st.
Step 1, give up.
Excellent.
Okay. I think it's Robin's turn, because that's the only steps I ever actually really recommend.
Oh, come on.
Don't try.
Okay.
I want to hear what Robin's steps are.
He's done. Sorry, folks. I really apologize for this. Totally screwed it up. Bad judgment on my part. But actually, he's pretty good. Come on. Let's bring him back in.
Bring out the duct tape.
The first is accept it's going to take time to do anything of quality.
Right.
Anything that you've achieved that has had meaning, you've had to invest in. Whether that's your finances, whether that's your fitness, whether that's a relationship, whether that's your education, whatever it is, it's kind of like riding a bike. You got to invest in it in order for it to pay off. So start with the training wheels. Don't make it so difficult, right? It's like trying to take a kid that's 16 or 15 and throwing him in a Formula One saying, good luck.
Right. But that's the mantra. People think that they're supposed to be able to do it that way.
So,
and if they don't, they're not smart enough.
Step 1 is, I would say, who do you want to become by the time of the date that you identify? So what's the timeline that you want to achieve? Who do you want to become at the end of that?
So give me an example of becoming someone.
So for me, recently, and I could show you, and then Robin would be really upset. I could show you, I recently tore my Achilles heel 100%. And it's been 5 months that I didn't walk. I'm now walking. And one of the things that I realized, and for those that don't know, former athlete, major sponsor, was Regimental Marine of the Year. I was the guy, Robin, that was walking across the peaks of a mountain with a pair of skis over my shoulders dropping into avalanche zones. I was the guy that you see like Tom Cruise hanging 2 miles vertical off of a cliff. If it was stupid, I was there, right?
And saving the country, mind you.
Yes. So Then I tear my Achilles playing with my son. So at least it was worthy of the injury. And surgeon says, look, I know that you coach these professional athletes. This isn't one of those tears. You're done. This is a career ender. You're going to be lucky if you can go hike 5 miles for the rest of your life. I said, really? He goes, you can, as long as you can deal with whatever level of pain, then go do whatever you want. But you're not going to be able to tolerate it. So going from an identity that I defined part of who I was by my physical ability, my physical excellence, doing charities and raising money, doing extraordinary feats, having Navy SEALs support us as our support crew, to realizing I know what my self-worth is. I know what I'm capable of. I don't need to prove it to anybody. And frankly, that lion's been fed. It's time for me to pass that baton. So who do I want to become? I want to become the guy that can hang with his son. The guy that can go hang with the guys and go ski on reasonable, like groomed trails, right? And be able to have the stamina, but no longer lead, no longer be the guy that has to be on the podium. So if I didn't have that who I want to become, that clarity, then I might still be choosing vehicles, activities that are unhealthy, that are unattainable, and then I'm depressed because I can never achieve that level anymore. So knowing who you want to become is going to help you select what are the vehicles or the tools that will allow you to manifest that.
Right.
So writing a book, Robin, you used that example of being a bestseller.
So there's someone who you become.
There you go. There's somebody who you can become. But here's the thing. If I know that that's what I want to become, then the second is what are the vehicles that are going to best support that? If you expect me to have written a book sitting down in front of a computer or pen and paper and just write it out, not going to happen. So what do? I went into a film studio in Hollywood for 3 days and just talked. Transcribed it.
He has problems talking, in case you didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, the book's only 12 pages, but it took 3 days to get.
A lot of pictures, too. We only have 1 minute. So just to wrap up, it's all who you become is also your identity. It's being super dad. It's being super husband. It's what are these things, because those are things that we can really relate to. Those are tangible, and they really have an impact on the people around us and ourselves in having that kind of experience that we want. And one thing that he hasn't shared with us yet, his plan, and he already is there if he would admit it, but is be a wisdom leader, right?
Yes. I have been either naive or bold enough and courageous enough to say that is a marker that I want to achieve.
Right. And he's well on his way there. So
with that, as you're about to finish, it's critical you have the right form of measurement. So you can tell, are you on course or have you veered off?
So just to wrap it up too, because this is what I've learned from him, and I'm a surgeon, so I make things really short instead of big, small. Who do you want to become, and then what's tangible at the end of 2020, and then reverse engineer it in quarters of the year, and kind of decide, okay, what are things that need to happen? You talked about lead and lagging indicators. So measuring the activities that will get you the actual indicator that you've accomplished your goal. So one thing that I'd like to wrap it up, I really want to thank you for this. I'm going to give you the last word. Thank you for not having me talk that much.
I think we're all thankful of that.
Yeah, I know. So you didn't have to say that, by the way, but that's okay. How do people get a hold of you? How do they find you?
So it's really easy. ChadECooper.com. E is an echo. ChadECooper.com. You can find everything under there, including the foundation. In fact, if you go to ChadECooper.com/free courses, then you'll also find an entire free course. I ask you to donate to the foundation, and it will actually help you do your goal setting for 2020.
Awesome. Well, why'd you take so long to tell us that?
Because it's only a 12-page book. It takes me 3 days.
All right. So, I'm Dr. Bart Rademaker. This is Prescription for Your Transformation. Real people, real conversations, real success. Tapping into your authentic genius so that you can design and live the life of your dreams on your terms. And it's really all about tapping into what I call the collective wisdom, creating that space of generative collaboration. And really, understanding that our life is full of tremendous promise, tremendous talent. We have to get over this BS about what life really is and being that victim and complaining and criticizing everybody else, and start working together, finding amazing individuals like Chad Cooper that will help you transform the life. The answers are out there. The people are out there. You have to differentiate from those people that say, oh yeah, just do this and you'll get there. No, it's a lot of work. With the right guidance, everybody will get there. I thank you. I'm Dr. Bart Rademaker. Chad, thank you so much. And I will see you next week. Go for it, Robin.
Thanks for listening to Dr. Rademaker's Prescription for Transformation. Join Dr. Bart Rademaker live right here on StarWorldWideNetworks.com or on demand 24/7. It's time.